Hey everybody, it's Julie. Welcome to Hello Monday. Today I am making this fall themed card. The air has finally gotten crisp around here and it's feeling like fall, and that's what inspired this design. I'm going to be working with Concord and Ninth's wood grain background stamp. This is kind of a barnwood realistic texture. I just love it. I'm also using this tree dye by Savvy Stamps, and I love the organic style of this tree dye. First, I'm going to take some Neenah Solar White 80 pound and crease that fold line with my Teflon bone folder. And then I'm going to grab the background stamp by Concord and Ninth and ink that up with some Delicata Golden Glitz ink. And I'm just going to leave it on that carrier sheet there and work with it from this direction. I'm going to lay my card front face down very carefully on top of that inked stamp, and then take some scratch paper and put that over the top because, I don't like getting anything on my fingers. It will also enable me to press firmly all over the surface and not shift the paper at all to get a nice even impression all across the front of my card. Then I'm going to take some Craftaboard. This is a really cool Essentials by Ellen exclusive. It is kind of like chipboard, but it's not as compacted and it's very lightweight. And I love the fact that it's kind of a light white color. And I'm going to cut 2 of the trees from the Craftaboard and then also from some 140-pound Canson watercolor paper. And to make my faux chipboard embellishment, I'm just going to layer the 2 Craftaboard die cuts on top of each other. And I'm just using a Zig 2-way glue pen to glue them together. You could use whatever adhesive you prefer, but I had my glue pen there and I forgot to put some of that stick-it tape on the back. So I just thought, you know what, this is going to work just fine. And then I grab my watercolor piece and that's going to go on top, and it's all going to layer perfectly together because of the die cutting effect there. And I'm just using my tweezers to just kind of press everything into alignment. And then I'm going to weight it down on top with some acrylic blocks and let it sit until it's completely dry. Then I can move on to the rest of the project. I'm grabbing the Thankful stamp set, and I wanted these expressions here, thankful for you. And I've already done some stamp surgery for a previous project where I cut it apart, and that's going to work perfectly for my card front. Inking up with some Avery L dark brown pigment ink, and that's going to help my sentiment there stand out. And here I can get an idea. Oops, I got a little bit of extra ink there on that edge, and I'm afraid it'll give me a goof on my card. So I'm just going to go ahead and clean that away very quickly with a baby wipe. And then I can go ahead and stamp that. I'm really glad I did that because it turned out perfect and I didn't have to go back and do it over. So now here's my chipboard embellishment. You can see how thick it is with those 2 layers, but oftentimes you have to layer 5 pieces of cardstock to get this kind of effect. And here I only needed 3 layers because the watercolor paper went on top. And then I'm going to glue this in the same way to my card front using my Zig 2-way glue pen. So I'm going to anchor that down, make sure it's in place, and then once again I'm going to grab something heavy like my clear acrylic blocks and stack those on top. Sometimes I add some pressure there with my hands just to make sure I'm weighting it all down and let it dry. And then once it's dry, I wanted to do a little bit of coloring, and I'm going to use these brand new to me Derwent Inktense watercolor pencils. Now you can color with them like regular colored pencils, but you can also use them on watercolor paper, and I'm just scribbling some color here just to show you what it looks like when you apply it directly to the paper and then take your water brush over the top. Now sometimes those pencil strokes can show through even though you try blending it out with the water. So you kind of want to be a little bit gentle when if you're sketching something that you want to watercolor with these pencils later on, then you want to make sure you're using a really light hand so you don't have these pencil lines showing up when you start to blend out your work. But this is what it looks like after you've drawn something or sketched it and then blended it out with the water brush. And then here's what it looks like when you load directly from the pencil tip to your pencil. So it's a very different effect. It's not quite as intense, but you can always add more color later, but you can avoid the pencil lines that can sometimes show up on your watercolor work when you're using watercolor pencils. And that's the method I'm going to use here to color my faux chipboard watercolor tree. And I'm just going to go around here with this really bright green. It's not going to remain this bright, but that's the color I'm laying down first. And then I'm going to grab this like chili pepper red. It's kind of a deep, rich, darker red, very earthy colored. And I'm going to go right over the top here and just let that kind of blend a little bit with the green. I'm not going to be super, super careful. I just kind of wanted to get that autumn look where the colors are kind of turning from green to red. And I'm also going to grab a dark brown pencil and go ahead and add just a little bit of color to add some shading to the branches of my tree and the tree trunk. And I'm not going to be very heavy-handed. I didn't want to make it a solid brown. I like that soft, delicate look I'm getting here, so I'm just going to run with that. And I decided that my leaves weren't quite bright enough, so I grabbed the orange watercolor pencil and I'm just going to go right over the top and add orange to kind of intensify, almost like make that tree, look like those flaming orange and red leaves that you see turning at this time of year. So now that I'm done with that, I'm going to let it dry completely. It's very important to let it dry completely. And I left it alone. I actually walked away, left it alone. It gets tempting to do other things, but I like it better when I just leave it alone. And then I'm going to come back in here with my two-way glue pen again. And it's important that this be dry before this next step because you want that glue to dry completely. So I'm using the chisel nib to very carefully add just a little bit of glue on the side of the leaves. I'm not covering the whole leaf, just kind of the sides and edges with the two-way glue, and it's going to go on blue, but it will dry clear. And once you're completely done with that, you need to step aside, like let it go and let it dry completely because you don't want it to be wet in any way. You want it to dry until it feels tacky. And I have a piece of scrap deco foil. This is a really neat transfer foil. It's going to transfer from this piece, this scrap piece, to the tacky two-way glue pen. And this is why it's really important to make sure it dries until it's tacky and it's not wet, because otherwise the foil will not stick and transfer. So I'm just burnishing with the pad of my thumb. I'm not using my fingernail or anything hard. I'm just using the pads of my fingertips to get a really nice clean transfer and highlight those leaves. And I love the effect. Now I could do more to this card, but I just loved it so much the way it was. I didn't want to do anything else to it. And here you can see this beautiful effect. A quick card with a lot of pizzazz, but very simple and elegant. Oh, I love it. You can see more still shots at the Classroom blog, and all the supplies are available at ellenhutson.com. Thanks for watching.